Hello, and welcome to Comics Magic, the podcast for creating and kickstarting your comics. My name is Paul Rashid, and I'm the creator of The Red Ram. And with me is my art director of Comics Magic.
Hi, I'm Miguel Galindo. I'm a comic book artist and a political cartoonist.
That's right. And I was fortunate to meet you when I was looking for an artist for a parody comic, and that worked really well with your political cartoons. And ever since then, we've been working together and enjoying it. So I'm so glad to be introducing our Comics Magic audience to each of us. And today we're going to be interviewing you to find out a little bit more about you and your work. But you know what, Miguel, let's start with take us back to your first experience with comic books.
Okay, that was a long time ago. I remember in Mexico they used to publish some comic strips on the Sunday newspapers, and they were lying around on the house all the time. So I was starting to learning to read, and those were really helpful. I learned to read in a Bugs Bunny comic strip. That was my first one. Then later, I remember I was around 5 or 6 years old, maybe seven. My older brother had a collection of comic books. He used to buy some Marvel titles that they were publishing in Mexico those years, and he kept them in a portfolio really hidden from me. So sometimes he allowed me to open up and look at the collection, and I just love the colors, the Kirby art, the dynamics of the superheroes. I just love them, and I wanted to collect comics from the very early age.
That's great. And then tell me about your college and university training. It was in graphic design, right?
Yeah, in those days, working in comics was not really an option for us down here in Mexico. The comic industry was really dead around the 90s. So I opted for studying graphic design. So I thought that way I could draw for a living, maybe do some illustration or something. So I went to college and studied graphic design and started working on illustration around the 2000, year 2000, something like that.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think I read in an interview that Todd McFarlane, his education was in graphic design. For those of us that don't know, what are some things that are paramount when doing graphic design?
Well, they teach you a lot about composition, about color, about typography. You do take a lot of courses on drawing, but that is only used for sketching the things that you're going to present to a client. So graphic design is a good way, a good path for someone that wants to go into the commercial arts, but not really about drawing comics. I had to learn to make comics later on the job.
Yeah, yeah. And then, so tell me about some of your first work in publishing and magazines.
Well, I started making some illustration for some magazines around the year 2002. In those days, there were still a ton of magazines being published in Mexico, and they used some illustrations for, maybe an article that talks about technology or talks about business or something like that. And the art directors on the magazines didn't always have the right photo for the article. So they decided to ask for illustrations, and I started making some chump chain in those days with some drawings. But I was very happy. I was ecstatic to see my first drawings published in magazines.
Yeah, that's awesome. How many years did you work there?
Probably around 7 to 10 years doing illustration for magazines. The editorial industry in Mexico has been on a downfall since then. So
Yeah,
very few
no,
magazines are still published.
that's still great. And then again, you were doing your own hand illustrations, and then were
Yeah.
you also doing any graphic design or?
Well, yeah, some work for some clients, some logos, some graphic identity for some clients. but I never really liked designing. I just went to that through that path for for the option of drawing something.
Yeah, yeah. And then for me, being a writer, uh, creator, and working with artists, along my journey, I've learned a lot about, especially where we are today with digital drawing and things. When did you learn, and how did you learn, these different TIFF files and the coloring and digital uh, things and the DPI, all these technical things that anyone that wants to be an artist today really has to learn.
Yeah, when I went to college, those days we still did everything on paper and with pencils and markers and that kind of thing. So when I started working, I had to learn all that techie stuff on the job. So it was a transition for me in those days. But then at first I was really like not really into it, but I had to go uh, full in to get a job. Everybody was working on digital when I started.
Yeah, and again, I know that we have plans for our ongoing art series, and you're going to be doing some drawing, and then I mean, do you want to explore some of the kind of the some of the technical aspects of the art craft, and if so, what things what do you think are going to be really important to go over?
Well, yeah, I would like to share some of the things I've learned through the years. I don't think I ever mentioned to you, but I had a little workshop with some friends that I started teaching drawing around those years, around probably 2010, 2012. So I taught drawing, I taught illustration, and I really like sharing the knowledge. I love when people start developing their talent, and I can contribute a little bit to that.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And of course, that was in person. That was around 2010, 2012. But one thing that'll come back is also with me personally. My career. Uh, I'm a psychiatrist, so in medical school, one thing that's going to be coming up a lot is how we learn in med school for procedures. You see one, you do one, and then you teach one. So it's just yeah, but it's just funny that you showed a strong interest in teaching back over a decade ago, and that just shows that that's in your DNA to be collaborator, which you definitely are. You're an amazing collaborator. I'm so fortunate I get to work with you, but also that you like to teach others, and you had some of that years ago. So I think that's and again, um, you're the one who kind of brought comics magic concept to me, but we'll keep on going. We'll keep on with the
Okay.
timeline. And tell me about, when did you start considering doing comics, drawing comics?
Well, when I was working as an illustrator, a project came up from a client that was really unexpected. It was a kind of project that happens once in a lifetime for an illustrator in Mexico. It was making a comic about a wrestler, a luchador down here in Mexico, whose name is Blue Demon, and he's really famous down here. So they called me to make a comic about him. That was a project to teach people about lymphoma. This guy had lymphoma at some point in his life, and he wanted to make this comic to teach people to take care of themselves and be aware of lymphoma. So we did that comic, and it was
Wow.
really successful for me. People love it, and it really opened in my mind the idea of making maybe I can make a living doing comics. So that was an important point in my career.
Wow. And again, you won that contest, right?
Oh well, that was later. That comic that I just mentioned was like an assignment from an agency. But
Okay.
later, I'm gonna teach a little story about my life and how it intertwines with the drawings and the cartoons. At some point, my father, who passed away some years back, he was in a rough shape. He had to be hospitalized, and he was down here. In the hospital, you have to be there at all times. A relative has to be there with the patient. So one of my brothers, my half brother, who I have never really met, it was a little strange, but I was almost 40 and he was like 50 something. I have never really met him. So we both had to be there with my father, and we started talking, and he asked me about what I do for a living. I told him about the cartoons and about the illustration and all that stuff. And he told me that he just read in a newspaper in Mexico, a very important newspaper, that they were looking for a cartoonist. And he told me, I'm going to send you the page of the newspaper so you can apply. And I said, okay, I'll do it. I sent some cartoons that I've been doing for another magazine, and I won the second prize on the contest. They called me later that they're going to give
Wow.
me a contract to work for them for 6 months,
Oh
and
my
that
God.
happened almost 8 years ago. So I'm still working with them, and I
Wow.
developed a second career as a political cartoonist here in Mexico. That is, it's really a position that brings you a lot of attention, good and bad attention. So some people hate my work, some people love it. So I learned to deal with that too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's so amazing how these things kind of came to you because you love from what I'm hearing, you loved illustration, drawings, color as a kid with these early comics. Then you go to university and study graphic design. Then you get to work at a magazine doing illustrations. You learn a lot of the technicalities that are going to help you years in the future. Then you get to which I didn't really remember the lymphoma comic book with the wrestler, but how cool is that if as a physician to be able to do some education through comic books to help people help and advocate for their health. It's amazing. Then unfortunately, with your father's illness, but you serendipitously meet your half brother. You talk about what you do. He talks about a contest. You get second place. They awards you a contract for 6 months, and now you've been doing comics ever since.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a story.
That's it. That's amazing. Tell me, so yeah. Before we go into comics, tell me a little bit more about the political cartoon because I'll just say, um, we recently wrapped up a Kickstarter. It was Prez versus Prez, which was a political cartoon where we really make fun of both sides of the American political landscape because it's such a farce. And during that Kickstarter, we also, for the first time, got to print and publish some of your work for the first time outside of the internet. So, and of course, I saw some of your work, because we're both in North the Americas, and Trump. In his first candidacy, and now he's all over the news and affects all of our countries in the world. But just talk about a little bit about the political cartoon that you do, the company it's with, how frequently you do it, and then some of the things that have come out of it.
Okay. After they gave me the contract to work on the newspaper, his name is El Universal. It's the most important newspaper in Mexico. It really has a long story, more than 100 years has been published. And the most important and famous cartoonists in Mexico have worked there. So I started working there, and I was really a fish out of the water because I have never done political cartoons that seriously. I just done some for another magazine and for some fun. But I started developing the what is required to do a cartoon, to learn to be well informed, to try to present things in a allegorical, metaphorical way with the drawings. You have to also uh, take a stand in some issues. Cartooning is an opinion, so you have to take a hard stand on some issues. So at first, the first years, I was really not that flowing for me. I had some rough times, But later I started developing a little bit more of what is required to be a cartoonist. And at some point, I won an award, the most important award in Mexico for cartoonists, that is the National Journalism Award. And it was a cartoon I did about the mothers that seek the remains of their dead sons. That it's a tragic phenomenon that's happening in Mexico very, very frequently. That
Wow.
people disappear and the relatives look for them because the authorities never look for them.
Oh
And
my gosh.
yeah, they look for them, and they develop uh, like this aura of the person that is looking for their loved ones. So I did a cartoon about that. They gave me the award, and from there, my career has been going on an upward direction.
Wow. Yeah,
This year they
congratulations on
just
that. Well, I think that was
thank
that was
you,
during COVID. I think it was around 2023. You got that
'21.
political humor award.
Yeah, 21, 2021.
Or 21. Wow, I've known you. Wow, wow, wow. Oh, that's awesome. And again, not only do you have amazing artwork, but for these political cartoons, you have the complete 100% creative control, and you're the one coming up with the idea and writing them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's the thing with illustration. One thing that it's very important is that you are always on the service of the client ideas. So you have to like give them more presence or more power. But the idea is for a service for a client. But as a cartoonist, you are a journalist, and you have to make your own investigations. You have to decide which is the team you want to talk about, and you have to come up with ideas. So it's really an independent kind of work that you have to do.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm so glad that we were able to collect them. And again, for the first time printed, we only printed 25 copies. They're really rare. You titled it "Everything Is Not Okay," and because again, you're advocating for things that are happening in your country that also have ripples across the world. And again, you were definitely given that award because of how impactful your work is. So I love that. And then and how often, and if people want to follow you on social media, they just follow your name, Miguel Galindo, correct?
Oh yeah, I'm in Facebook as Miguel Galindo, and in X as Galindo Cartones, and in Blue Sky as Miguel Galindo.
Yeah, and also you're gonna be able to see Comics Magic on Substack, YouTube, um, Blue Sky, and possibly Facebook. So we'll be there, and hopefully, Miguel, I hope you can share some of your works with our audience just to see some of the great things you've done over the years. But then, so let's take it, and you publish. How many cartoons do you do? Political cartoons do you do a week or a month?
Oh, at least one a week,
One a
one
week.
each
Wow.
week. But probably some weeks I make two or three. So in a month I ended up doing like 8 or 9 cartoons.
Whew. Wow, that's awesome. To again, from inception, coming up with the idea, you do all the drawing, you do the coloring, you do your text. It's amazing. You got to check those out. And then how, tell us a little bit about then. So what have some of the comics you worked on? Have you just been kind of a freelance contractor, and what have you worked on?
Yeah, I started looking at Facebook groups about making comics some years back, and I started making like some freelancing, some projects for some writers that wanted to see their ideas on paper. You know, the indie comic industry has grown a lot, I believe, the last few years. And then at some point, I found a guy that was looking to make a Seinfeld parody. I thought this guy's crazy, but let's do it. So I sent him some pages I did for a magazine down here. Those pages I sent you, I believe, were from Joe Tejodo, a Mexican comedian that, that asked me to make a comic for him. And I thought that that's really a good coincidence because you were trying to make a Seinfeld not a
That's
USA
right.
comedian.
That's right. And it was a long journey, but we finally made Defrosted, a Seinfeld parody, and just the artwork is amazing on here. Um, these characters are Gary, Giorgio, Irene, and K2. These are a complete parody. So if you love sitcoms, his artwork is just amazing. It's on Amazon now, and it just blew me away. I love that entire process. And just to geek out for a second though, but although you work in digital, we did those pages on paper too. So what was it like going back to the pen after doing digital?
It was a challenge, a little bit of a challenge. It took me some time, but I love it. I love. I had those original pages for you, and I will be sending them over soon.
That's right. That's why I can't wait to get those. So, and then, well, that just brings us to tell me a little bit about, because you had the idea for Comics Magic, you pitched it to me, and just kind of curious for our audience. Tell us, where this drive is. You had this idea for some time, and where did it come from?
Well, as a '90s kid, I used to go to every comic book shop down here in Mexico. That was not too much, as around 3 or 4 comics on the city, and I loved going to just to check out the new comics that were coming each month. But I couldn't afford them, so I just bought one or two. And on the tables where they had the comics, they had these publications that were freebies that you could take all of them and just read about the new projects that the publishing houses were making, the artists were developing, and those were like fanzines, and you can take them for free. So I just took all I could find alongside my regular comics, and I love how they interview the artists. The artists talk about the creative process, about where their ideas came from. Uh, I just love those magazines. I was looking for them on the internet because I lost my physical copies, and I found some of them. Those that Image used to publish, Valiant published some of them too. And I thought we can do this now. We can do a digital magazine that has not that it's not that hard to get out there for the people, and we can recreate these things that I used to love when I was a kid.
That's right. That's right. That's what it was. And, the more I'm living in this world, the more I'm realizing if there's something that you want or desire and you can't find it, that's a place to start creating. That's what I find it, some of the works that I worked on. And now we're here, and we recently brought in a great editor. Charles Santino will be interviewing him as well. And I think the three of us, we all love comic books. We love creating comic books, and we like giving back. And we're excited to give back to you creators out there, help you make your comics, and get paid for your comics through such crowdfunding things like Kickstarter. So thank you all for joining us. Miguel, thank you so much for sharing a lot about your personal journey and life in comics. It is quite the story, and I love working with you, and I can't wait for all the things that we do together in Comics Magic.
Great. Thank
Awesome.
you.